Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. So joining me today is NETX5 and Alex, and today we're going to be talking about Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. This stars Christopher Reeves, which everybody knows, and Gene Hackman's back in this film. So this really looks at, another installment in the Superman franchise, but it sort of is a kind of a silly concept of the idea of creating peace and getting rid of nuclear weapons and things like that, and introduce a new villain, but I don't know if it quite works. And this film, if you like Superman, there's elements to you can enjoy, but ultimately it's a really terrible film and one of the worst in the series of Christopher Reeve films, where number 1 and 2 being the best. So what did you guys think of it?
Shit. Total shit. It was shit all the way. It was shit when I first saw it, shit now.
There was literally not a single thing of it I liked.
Oh, well,
Not even a single.
Nothing.
Christopher Reeves was
Nothing.
good.
Yeah, but if we want to see a good Christopher Reeve, watch the first Superman. We don't Superman 4 really doesn't really add anything at all. So
No.
even if Christopher Reeve's good, it's not even worth seeing him in this film.
What I like though is the aspect of he's trying to sell the farm. His mother and father are both gone now, and he's trying to sell the farm. I kind of like that idea because it went back to the roots of Superman, back to the Smallville, and I always felt that if they took elements of that and Superman 3 and cut them together as one, it would make a much more interesting film, and take bits and pieces out of the third that didn't work and just put that into it. I don't know.
I thought it was boringly shot. I thought everything about it was kind of
well,
boring. It was
so
just...
that's a positive, so negative. So yeah, well, I guess with the negatives, the visual effects are terrible. There's a fight sequence that takes place on the moon, but yet they can walk normally.
And
He moves the moon.
and even the space looks like a black curtain, pretty much.
Yeah, and he even moves the moon to create a
Eclipse to block, the powers of Nuclear Man, whatever. So yeah, we'll get into Nuclear Man in a little bit. But for me, I knew it was bad when I first saw it, but watching it now, it's boring than I remember. Nothing happens pretty much, because it's just Superman wants to fight for nuclear weapons and put a stop to them. Some super villain is created. That's it. That's all the story is, and it's something that could have been done for TV or a simple Smallville episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do agree with that. There's been reports that this and Masters of the Universe had the same budget, was split in two, and you can really tell there was not much money going into either film, really.
Yeah, you compare the first Superman film from 1978 to this from 1987, holy shit, there's a big difference within visual effects. Superman 1, it's a little bit dated now, but it still looks a lot better than this.
Well, I think it was a more practicality of him flying anyway, where it was more, strings and stuff like that to make him fly, and less digital effects.
Yeah. Here it's just green screen, and the same flying effect every single time.
It gets a bit boring.
Same shot.
Yeah, it is continuously the same shot. There's not much else that really like about it, I guess. I just feel that, it suffers from lack of budget and not a really, really great story. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, and it sets up stuff that pretty much goes nowhere, because there's a scene where Superman once again reveals his identity to Lois Lane. They have that romantic flying scene from Superman 1, and then he erases her memory again, and it's why is this scene in the film? It adds nothing. It's just a reminder of the first film. Nothing. And I know they were probably trying to justify its 90-minute runtime. The first film's runtime, to remind people, was nearly 2.5 hours. And this film was supposed to be longer, and a lot of the stuff that was in this film, I feel it kind of felt like deleted scenes pretty much. Stuff that didn't deserve to be in the film, essentially.
Yeah, it was ultimately rehashing things we'd already seen before in the past 3 films. And I don't know, I think it's a film that probably shouldn't have been made, because you're right, it didn't add anything to it, didn't contribute in any way, and it was just kind of, nothing much happened in it.
And at least with Superman 3, which I think is probably a worse film than this, at least that had the idea of Superman going rogue, and it had that epic scene where he fights himself. That's one of the best scenes in that shit film. Here, nothing really happens. There's no dilemma for Superman. all there is like, oh, Superman, you're not fighting for the human race. You're just letting nuclear missiles go off everywhere, you asshole.
It's very sentimental too, and I think it's very American.
Yeah,
and I think it loses.
Yeah, for me, this feels like a superhero film that Steven Spielberg would have directed if he was younger in his earlier days, with no budget, pretty much.
Like Roger Corman. So, what did you think, Alex?
I really did not think much very good of it. It was. I will give it one thing. I felt like it's a fun movie if you're drunk, and you're just trying to point out all the horrible aspects, similar to The Room and stuff like that. But even Room, I found more entertaining.
Yeah.
This movie was like, there were some scenes where you could laugh and have a good time, and it was kind of so funny that it was bad.
I know someone who can do some good. Who? Santa Claus? No, Superman. Stuff like that made me laugh.
John Cry was terrible. I thought a waste of opportunity.
He kept trying to get that one catchphrase over. Oh no!
But no, yeah, I just thought it was like there was very few parts of it that I actually enjoyed. And for an hour and a half runtime of a movie, it felt an hour and a half. You could really feel the
felt very long and drawn out. We're like with the 1994
Fantastic Four.
Yeah, even with that wasn't great, but it was kind of fun to sit around and joke and make fun of it. And this film, I agree, in some parts you can do that, but because not much happens and it's very drawn out,
it's just boring.
Yeah, nothing really exciting happens. Superman doesn't learn or grow or change like he did in the other films. He just sort of, I'm Superman and Clark Kent, and then we introduce a new love interest that he doesn't like, and it's just
it's pretty much just hello and goodbye, like for Superman in general here.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think they could have done such a better job, and the director I've never really heard of before, and
has done nothing since.
Yeah, and I just think they just, because Richard Donner did such a fantastic job with the first one, and he shot a lot of the second one as well, that they just brought on all these other random directors that just made garbage, and I think that Superman deserved better than what it got. And even though Superman Returns is a little boring at parts, I think it's a much better film than this in so many levels, in so many ways.
Yeah, I think Richard Donner was the only director to really, capture who Superman was. I'm sorry, but like Superman 1 from 1978 is the only good Superman film. Every other film has either struggled to recapture what the first film had, or just not do anything good with the character. Because even with Man of Steel, which got it right in some places, essentially, it just, I don't know, just for me, it bothered me, like just the direction they went with the character.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of flashbacks and stuff, and you didn't really get a sense of who he was, and I just felt it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. And I agree. I think the original Superman, Christopher Reeves, is the best Superman, and it's the best Superman film. There are different versions of it, but there is a Blu-ray edition that has all the cuts in it, and that's the best version of that film. But yeah, I just think that the new Supermans, even though Justice League was terrible, I felt they actually finally got Superman right in the end of that.
Except for the black suit. Which should have been the case when he
died exactly when he came back, and he should have had a beard and stuff. But I just mean, like, they sort of felt like they got him right there, where the previous films, it just didn't feel like the Superman we knew or I grew up with, or I didn't believe him as Superman to begin with, I guess. It took a while to grow into that. Where when I first saw Christopher Reeve's version when I was a kid, that's the Superman I grew up with, and that's how I've always imagined him. And the idea of how he split Superman and Clark Kent, and how he played both of them very differently, and I really liked that, and I think he brought a lot to the film.
In the small defense of Superman 4, I will admit, Christopher Reeve still is the best Superman. As both Clark Kent and Superman, he's the only one to pull off these two roles expertly.
Well, because even in the other versions, except for Superman Returns, they've never really split him into two like that, and never really played him sort of a bumbling fool like that before this film. And then, they did the same thing in Superman Returns, but it just felt with this film that he really is the essence of both characters, and he can define himself and the characters by playing them completely different. And I think that's really clever.
Gene Hackman, I like Gene Hackman. Like, he's got shit to work with here. Like, his weird layer, like, the production design of that thing is just absolutely absurd. But, you know, it's Gene Hackman. He's a 2-time Oscar winner. He's always good. Like, I've never found a film where I hated him. Like, even in garbage, he's kind of entertaining in this.
Yeah, he is entertaining. He's one of the better things about the film, and like you said, he doesn't have much to work with. And it doesn't. I don't understand this layer he has. Where he got the money for this and the special cars, and there's a woman dressed up in like old school attire.
Victorian or whatever time period outfit that was.
And there's just like leopard prints and random photos.
But I do admit one of his henchmen was pretty cool, and that's like the guy who played Porkins from Star Wars.
In another really great little cameo.
Yeah, he was definitely the character actor of the. He was definitely the character actor of the '80s. He was in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, Batman, which he played a bigger part as Detective Eckhart.
Yeah, he's quite good. And there's early Jim Broadbent as well, playing a villain who didn't really do much, but at least he was in it.
Yeah, didn't say a line, but he was there.
But ultimately this film is tragically bad, but I think it's worth having in your collection of the Superman collection, especially if you've got the original films. And maybe not one you go back to all the time, but you may watch it every now and again, or if you have to, I suppose. But yeah, unfortunately it's just not very good.
Speaking of visual effects and the action scenes, there's one the fight between Nuclear Man and Superman is bad. It's shit, to be honest. It's garbage. There's a whole 20 minutes where Superman is dying pretty much after what happened to him, getting scratched on the neck. That's like Nuclear Man's main weapon, his fingernails. Like, oh, I will scratch you and you will get sick and die. And Superman just withers away. He's just like, oh, I'm dying, I'm sick. Oh, that scratch hurt me so bad.
And when he goes to get the green crystal, he's turned into a 80-year-old man for some reason, which is weird.
Yeah, and then he finds the crystal, and then next time we see him, he's totally fine.
Yeah, they don't explain what he does with that. And
and there's ridiculous bullshit with Nuclear Man, because there's a second girlfriend for Superman. Nuclear Man finds this photo of her, and immediately he's like, I love her, tries to find her, and he comes, goes outside this building, and, Superman's right there, and is like, I want to find the woman, and it's Superman's like, you'll have to get through me first. How does he know what he's talking about? How does he know he's looking for this second girlfriend?
That's a good point. I never thought about that, and he just sort of lets him do all this stuff, but there's so much of the visual effects that rewrites the mythology of Superman,
rebuilding the Great Wall of China with eye vision.
Yeah, and Nuclear Man, or whatever you want to call him, he sort of can make things spin, he can make people rise in the air.
On wires, pretty much.
Superman can bring them back down. It's like, when did they ever introduce these powers?
And that's probably what they spent most of the budget on, rebuilding walls and spinning people.
It's clearly the people who made this had no idea what Superman was about or the mythology of what to stick to, and they just went off and did their own thing.
Yeah, because the production company that made this film, they're notorious for making shitty action films with Chuck Norris and Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Cliffhanger, I think, is one of those films.
I like Cliffhanger, but I know what you mean. They made a slew of really bad films. The producers are these sort of guys that would come up with the poster first without having a story or anything and try and sell it to get money.
To be fair, the poster is actually not that bad. It does capture what the film was trying to go for, but yeah.
I just think if they had better writers and a better director, it could have developed into something more interesting than what we saw on screen. And I think, a lot of the visual effects are just horrendous. They just get worse and worse. There's moments where he's flying in space and we can sort of nearly see through him because it's sort of layer upon layer.
And there's a scene where he and Nuclear Man are grappling in space, and you can tell they're standing on something in space, remind people.
And even the fight on the moon is ridiculous. Just the whole thing there, it just looks terrible. And then how he defeats him in the end, he throws him into a nuclear, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's but that powers him, doesn't it? And then it turns into a video game, all the lights light up in the town. And it's pretty terrible. Okay, well that's sort of all we're going to talk about. So we'll give this a bit of a score I score out of 5, and these guys score a different system out of 10. So we'll give it a score and then we'll go from there. So what do you give it in NETX5?
Yeah, still garbage. At least with Fantastic Four, I could defend it a little bit. It was fun. It was so bad it's good. Here, I don't know. It's so bad it's good, but I don't know. Rewatching it now, it's more boring than I remember. So I don't know. There's not there's not much incentive to ever come back to this. Like, I probably will watch it to torture some people. Like, oh, do you want to watch Superman 4? So yeah, I didn't like it. It's hard to defend this film. Like, Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman, like, they do their best with what they had to work with, but what they had to work with was not very good. So in the end, I'm going to give Superman 4: The Quest for Peace a 0 out of 10.
Ooh.
What are you going to give it, Alex?
Well, my biggest problem is I felt the runtime. It felt long, even though it's a 90-minute film, so it's not a particularly long film, but just the way it was cut together and just the
Paced as well.
Pace and everything about it was just really, really boring. I mean, there were some scenes you could laugh at it because it was being so bad that it was kind of funny, but they were only small parts, and then there'll be another 10, 15 minutes of just nothing happening. So yeah, I really, really did not like this film. I'm going to give it a 2.
Okay. Yes, well, I still liked aspects of this more than the Fantastic Four we saw. It isn't perfect, it isn't great, it is boring in parts, and there's stuff I didn't like in it. But there are stuff I did like, and for those sort of reasons, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5. I thought it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't the worst film I've ever seen, to tell you the truth. I've seen some bad films, but it isn't great at all. But that's sort of what I think about it. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Special thanks to NETX5 and Alex for joining me for this review. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.